We'll call the meeting to order. This is Monday, November 24th, 2025. It is the City Commission meeting. Could we have the roll call, please?
Smith.
Here.
Clute.
Here.
Bragg.
Here.
Harvey.
Here.
Mayor Robish.
Present. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll move on to the, consider the approval of the agenda. Is there anything that I skipped or missed or any additions?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Clute.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. Moving on to the consent agenda, matters appearing on the consent agenda are expected to be non-controversial and will be acted upon by the commission at one time without discussion unless a member of the commission requests an opportunity to address any given item. Items removed from the consent agenda will be discussed at the beginning of the formal items. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry, I did. I jumped over public forum, so. Is there anyone in the audience tonight here for a public forum? Or commissioners, do you have anything for a public forum? Okay, we're gonna move on to that consent agenda that I suppose recently talked about, so that's good. 4.1 for the consent agenda are the minutes of November 17th, 2025. 4.2, personnel items. Number 1, acknowledge the full-time status of Lur Paw in the solid waste maintenance 1 position for completing his 1,040-hour probationary period effective November 16th, 2025, making him eligible for supplemental benefits effective December 1st, 2025. And number 2, approve the part-time seasonal employment of Joshua Leachman as skating attendant for the Parks and Recreation Department, retroactive to November 16th, 2026, should be 2025, I think, at grade 1, step C, 1302 per hour. 4.3, for fuel quotes for city departments. 4.4, payment of the bills.
Move to approve consent.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Clute.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. Moving on to bid quote items. Consider the approval of bid number 2025-26 for the Huron Event Center Food and Beverage Management be awarded to One Oak Events LLC. Commissioner Smith, would you like to open this up for us? I see we have Brenda Jager with us here tonight also.
Yeah, let's get Brenda up to the front. No, I'll get things started with it. Come on up, Brenda. I'll get things started with it. This year, we opened our food and beverage service at the event center. We opened that up, request for bids or request for proposals. We did have 2 companies that responded for that opportunity, and we did choose to go with and recommend going with One Oak Events LLC, and maybe Brenda can elaborate on who that is and what we can expect.
One Oak Events LLC is Kevin Tompkins. He is part of the partnership that is doing the food at the event center now. Top Floor Events didn't put in a proposal. Kevin put in one through his own business, One Oak Events LLC. And so that was kind of, with his experience and everything, that was the one that we thought would be the best fit for the event center.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions for Brenda or Commissioner Smith? Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Clute.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. Thank you both for that
Thank you.
information. Moving on to 5.3, consider change order number 2 for the final in the amount of $60,909.96 and payment request number 2 in the amount of $370,927.60 from Asphalt Paving and Materials for bid number 2025 street milling and overlay, and authorize the mayor to sign. We have with us tonight the city engineer, Brett Runge.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I will handle this, just so we know, though, we did skip 5.2 that we'll need to go back to.
Who's in charge tonight?
Right?
Okay, go ahead. We're on 5.3.
Yep. Sounds great. So, this is the street mill and overlay project that we do yearly, and we're just finishing up the project. These are this is a balancing change order in the end, so we can finalize and do the closeout. The additional amount of the change order of the $60,909, that was for additional streets that we added. Due to the good bids of asphalt that we got this year, we added some additional streets. So in total, that's not all in this change order. We also added some streets in the spring portion of the job. But in total, we added Kansas Ave Northeast, a couple blocks, 18th Street by the high school this year. We did 10th Street Northeast, which is about one block there off from Dakota Avenue. 14th Street Northeast, which is another one block off from Dakota Avenue to Kansas. And then we did Union Ave and Center Street, which are both very wide, large streets. So we were able to add a lot of pavement here this year. So, but anyways, this is the balancing change order. No surprises here. We're still under the budget. The budget was $1,570,000. This change order comes out the project cost of $1,531,907. So 20,000 of that actually, so we're 40,000 under budget, but 20,000 of that is actually for road shaping the road of the Daypro Road that was also paved under this budget. So still under budget though. Anyways, we recommend approval of the change order and recommend acceptance of the pay request.
Okay.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any further questions for 5.3? Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Luke.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. 5.2, consider the approval to accept and approve the use of the bale bags bid that was provided by the city of Pierre for accent wire tie for a total cost of $78,912. And this has to do with our new baler, and I'm going to have Dale Fortin, the solid waste superintendent, come forward. And between him and Rhonda, they can fill us in on this. Commissioner
Yeah.
Clute, I'm sorry.
We did have this in budget for next year. The tariffs and stuff kicked in, so that changed the bid price with the tariffs, about $10,000, I think it was, all in, wasn't it? So, just coming back, Pierre also had, that we were looking at their bid, and they agreed at that time when we were doing budgets that we were gonna be able to jump on the bid. Well, then the tariffs kicked in and we had to raise that to this. They had to rebid it. We're just jumping in on that bid. Tonnage has been up. Our bales are actually heavier, so compared to what they were with the old baler. So we're figuring in the year, we're probably gonna go through 8,000 bags. In the past, it would have been sufficient to have about 6,500 bags. So that's how much our tonnage has actually gone up. So trying to jump in on half load with another city, their tonnage is also going up. So it made it between Pierre and Vermillion, they're ordering also off of this full loads. So everybody's kind of sitting there with a full load coming in. And this should take us through until 2027. And sometime in 2027, so right now, we currently have 4 months, we're estimating 4 months worth of bags on site. It takes 3 months to get the order.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
thank you for that information. Any other questions for Dale? Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Luke.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. Moving on to petitions and communications. 6.1, consider the lease agreement between the City of Huron and Ben Drought for the lease Rodland Creek Golf Course Clubhouse and authorize the mayor to sign. Commissioner Bragg, do you have some light on this?
Sure, yeah, so no change to the specific pricing. We had discussed this earlier. The only change is that in the last couple of years, we've noticed with the weather, the idea was that the city would pay for the utilities during the time that it was active for city income, and then when it went to the off-season at a time that normally we wouldn't have any city revenue coming in, if Ben wanted to run his business out there, he would pay a rental fee and pay for the utilities. The last couple of years, with the exceptionally good weather, both in the fall and in the spring, we've had some times where we still have folks coming out and we still have city revenue coming in during the time that he was paying his portion of it. And so during the time that we were looking at the weather and talking about it, essentially by the time we went through this with the attorney and talked to him and got it ready, that'll be ready to roll December 1st. And then we did bring it back 1 month just because in the last several years, in the spring, every year, we've had people ready to go earlier. So no change to the pricing, but we're just looking at the kind of setting the time frames based on what we've actually seen. And again, we do get receipts for revenue. Obviously, it's less income coming in during these months, but especially in that one spring month that we're moving it back, we do usually get to see some pretty good revenue coming in. We probably would have done November to the end of February, but by the time we worked everything through with the attorney, and then again, as it turned out, we had some really nice November days, so it probably was okay in the end. But so no changes otherwise. We're just looking at the dates that it's effective to try and match up so that the city is paying for the utilities when the city revenue is coming in, and that Ben's business is paying for the utilities during the time that he's using them exclusively.
Okay.
I'll move to approve the agreement.
Second?
Any further explanation needed?
Also authorize the mayor to sign it.
Okay, good. Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Clute.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Roberts.
Aye. 6.2, consider liability waiver agreement from Northwestern Energy for installing holiday decorations on their streetlight poles and authorize the mayor to sign. Just recently, we got an email from Northwestern wanting to update this because of the new poles out there and whatever, so it's pretty self-explanatory. It's just, we had an older agreement, and so with the new poles on there, they just want a new lease agreement, basically. So that's really all it is. You have any
Motion.
more on that? Brett?
And it's not just the new poles. We actually didn't have an agreement with them before. This is a new policy that they're putting out now. So so the poles down Dakota Avenue, for instance, those are actually DOT.
Well, that's,
Just so we're clear. So these would be for side streets like 3rd Street and all those side streets where we have poles coming off from Dakota Avenue, that we're putting Christmas decorations on. And that's why you might see where the decorations were finished on Dakota Avenue, but not some of these side streets, because we're waiting to sign this liability waiver.
I guess I stand corrected. I was talking to them about some other poles in the same conversation. so that's
Sure, yep.
Okay.
No, that sounds great, just for clarity there. And so this waiver lasts for 5 years, but then we also have to go in and we have to fill out, every year we have to go in and fill out some billing information on there. So basically, this is just giving us authorization to do that.
Okay. Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call, go ahead.
So have we been paying any utility billing on this in the past, on those poles?
I don't remember any, let me change hands, but.
Yeah, and you can't see it on the bills because we pay the money for the street lighting. So I mean, to look at it and know how much it was, I don't know that I could tell.
So that potentially could be a new expense with what we're doing here? I mean, is that,
Probably, yes.
so it could be,
That's the purpose of the billing information, they want to estimate that,
sure.
so they know what kind of lights we're putting up and.
I would assume it's gonna be pretty minimal, but,
Right,
because that's, we've converted everything to LED the last few years, right? So
yeah,
I think
Mostly,
we
yeah.
went through that,
Yeah,
yeah,
mostly.
yes.
yeah, so.
so,
So probably not a significant number of dollars,
No.
but that will potentially be a new
A new
expense.
expense under street
Right,
lighting, yes.
sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Clute.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. Moving on to 6.3, consider approval of South Commercial Lot 2D, a replat of South Commercial Lot 2C, and a part of Section 18, Township 110. This is in Southtown, and I'm going to turn this over to Ted Hayter, and he can enlighten us between him and Mr. Cranston.
Thank you, Mayor. Ted Hayter, Greater Huron Development Corporation. The plat that we're looking at on the screen is immediately east of Iverson Auto and just north of the church in Southtown. On the west boundary is Kansas Avenue. On the south boundary, 26th Street. And this plat is being requested for a new hotel to be developed in the next year and a half, which will also come into the next portion of the agenda.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, any questions, comments for Mr. Hayter?
Just for the record, the planning commission did vote unanimously to recommend approval as well.
Good, thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Clute.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. And then moving on to ordinances and resolutions. Excuse me, 7.1, consider resolution number 2025-07 for the TID District number 8. Okay, Mr. Hayter.
Thank you, Mayor. Here to request approval tonight for a tax increment district, tax increment financing for the hotel project that the lot was just approved for. We'll go through this with a handful of slides, starting out with the first one, a little bit about tax increment financing and what it is and how it works. Tax increment financing is a financing tool that uses property tax dollars to pay for the investment in infrastructure related to a project. That project could be streets, sewer, water, roads, or in this case, it could be the infrastructure needed to develop the project, which would include dirt work, concrete work, sewer, water, storm drainage, basically anything at or below the grade level, plus some land acquisition and design fees. The project needs to meet some sort of a public interest or be public infrastructure. So Barry, if you could go to the next slide. When we talk about a public good in Southtown, we've done some public infrastructure in conjunction with the city of Huron when we did a number of streets, curb, gutter, sewer, and water for those developments for residential and commercial development in that area. In this case, the public use is related to things like the South Dakota High School Activities Association, bringing state tournaments to the Huron Arena. The State B Girls Basketball Championships come to Huron on a regular rotation. The 2028 list for Huron had a /Vermilion as the location for the 2028 championship, and it was from the Activities Association that something needed to change with the hotel situation, and this is one of those changes that they've looked at. Another thing we need to do is bring more lodging in for events with the decks. We've met with the manager of the decks and then the manager of the fairgrounds, Peggy, and talked about events that they bid on that they specifically had feedback from that they didn't get because of lodging in the city of Huron. It didn't say whether that was the number of rooms or condition. It didn't say anything like that. It just said we didn't have the lodging to support the events that they wanted to do. So this will address the high school activities associations issues. This will allow the decks to bring in other events. And then this will also bring in other events to the community, like we've seen MX at the decks, which we didn't expect to be as big. I don't think the developers or the promoters had big of expectations as what they got. We have events in the events center. There are just a number of other events, softball games or tournaments. The Corinne soccer tournament could get larger. Just a whole other host of things that could happen. Next slide, Barry. How does it work? The simplest way to explain tax increment financing is that the city, the county, and the school, and the water development district collect tax today on a parcel as it exists. The increase in taxes after the development of a given parcel is what goes to pay off any infrastructure-related investments. So the city, county, school, water development district would continue to collect taxes as the parcel exists today. And any increase in property taxes would go to pay off any TIF investments. There's no real easy way to explain how it works, but that's the simplest way to explain things, is the increase, the increment, the new taxes being developed are what pay off the investment in the TIF. Thanks, Barry. The hotel that's being considered for this parcel is a Comfort Inn and Suites, 3-story, 74-room development on approximately 2.6 acres. We toured a number of facilities in Sioux Falls, in Iowa, and Nebraska to look at different hotels that would fit Huron's needs. We had a hotel consultant do a study of Huron, look at our existing facilities, our existing numbers, and then develop a recommendation. And what came out of that was a mid to upper scale, which is where Comfort Inn and Suites falls. Roughly 75 rooms, this is 74. This will have breakfast area, fitness room, hotel, lounge area, and an outdoor patio. And if you've been to Sioux Falls, Denny Sanford Sports Complex or Great Shots area, a hotel almost identical to this exists on that site today. Theirs is around 100 rooms and 4 stories. This is 3 stories and 74 rooms. Next is just a handful of pictures showing features, finishes. Fairly modern hotel that I think we're all familiar with. Next one is the situation of the lot and how the hotel will sit on it. On the north side, you see, looks like kind of like a racetrack up there with stormwater drainage, gravel parking, specifically targeting people that would be using the rodeo events. There's a lot of on-street parking that could be used there, but it's always nice to get vehicles off the street whenever we can. Gravel parking there, plus parking is required. Again, this is immediately east of Iverson Auto and north of the church. Next, Barry. That's the plat that was just approved showing the same parcel. This is the boundary of tax increment district number 8, which includes the hotel parcel and about an acre of property that is a current Walmart outlot, plus the connection of the two through 26th Street and 37 or Dakota Avenue. We have to connect parcels. That's the reason for going down the road. And we have to find ground that is outside of the existing TIF district that's out there in TIF District 3 and TIF District 6. So that's why we included the Walmart outlot that is also owned by the same group doing some work in the development of the hotel. Next, Barry. A little bit of information on the existing situation of tax increment finance districts today in Southtown. If you look at the map in red, that's TIF District number 3, which started in 2016. In green, TIF District 5, which was in 2017, and then encompassing both of those in yellow is TIF District number 6, which overlaid both districts created in 2019. TIF District 3 is a commercial TIF, including Iverson Auto, Dakota Land, the title company, ELO CPA, what was the ground round at that time is now Tokyo and Jefferson Village Apartments. TIF District 5 is a residential TIF that includes Wheatgrass Phase 1 and Phase 2, along with the housing. And as those TIF districts are retired, the increase in taxes over time will come back to the city and the county. The school, according to state law, is held harmless, so they don't see any reduction or put off in taxes. So once those are done, TIF 3 will generate about $60,000 a year in taxes. TIF District 5, about $350,000 a year in taxes, once those are retired, and an increase in valuation of over almost $20 million. Next slide, Barry. A little bit of homework that I had to do for your finance officer to make sure that she was comfortable with this. TIF District 3, TIF District 5, when they will retire, along with TIF District 6. So TIF 5, which is the residential one with Wheatgrass, Phase 1, Phase 2, and the residential development, with no other new development, is going to retire relatively quickly anyway. TIF District number 3, which will benefit from this, as well as TIF District number 6. The hotel is estimated to generate about $108,000 a year in property taxes. The impact of that project will speed up the retirement of TIF 3, speed up the retirement of TIF 6, and get those dollars back onto the city and county tax rolls quicker. Looking at this, you'll see TIF 3 retiring in about 2033, maybe the first half of 2033. TIF 5 in 2028, and TIF 6 in 2039. This assumes that there is no other development in these TIF districts other than the hotel. We have 2 governor's houses under development with Greater Huron right now. One of those will be sold here in a few weeks. The other one finished in a month or 2. We will have 2 more coming the following year in 2026 and 2 more in 2027. So we know of other development along with private builders that are going to be building homes in that area. These are conservative estimates using 2024's tax collection for property taxes in these parcels, and again, assuming nothing else happens. Next slide, Barry. A handful of slides showing you what has happened in Southtown over a number of years. In 2014, a handful of houses in the southeast corner, Coburn's in the northwest, some storage sheds along 21st in the fire department. In 2016, a little bit of infrastructure work going in for the commercial part of the TIF, TIF 3. Next slide, Barry. 2016 was when our first TIF district in Southtown was created. You can see Wheatgrass Phase 1, Iverson Auto, you can see Dakota Land, and the title company in 2020 in there, development in 2018. 2020 also shows some new infrastructure going in the residential area with cul-de-sacs and a loop in there. Next slide, Barry. Again, just more development occurring. The largest noticeable change is 2022 when Wheatgrass Phase 2 was built out there. Wheatgrass Phase 1 consisted of 69 apartment units and a dozen townhome units. Wheatgrass Phase 2 was another 69 apartment units and 36 townhome units. And if we add in the houses that are out there, we're over 200 housing units in Southtown. If we assume 2.5 people per household, which is about the national average, we have over 500 people residing in Southtown that didn't live there roughly 10 years ago. Next slide, Barry. More development in there, and if we go to the following slide, it'll show us a 10-year difference. On the left is the original base valuation in property taxes that was used to develop the property tax formula. TIF District 3 had an assessed valuation base of just over $650,000. TIF 5 had $2.2 million, and 10 years later, That jumped up to 11.4 and 25.4 million, so we've got over almost $37 million, where we had about $3 million in assessment. That big of a jump in 10 years. The next steps, projected timeline, on the 4th of November, the TIF committee met, consisting of 2 representatives each from the city, the county, and the school, all of those elected members, plus myself from Greater Huron, recommended approval to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission met Wednesday night on the 19th at 7, reviewed this project and the parcel, recommended approval. If approved tonight, the process for the hotel would be bidding and design in the winter, construction starting in the spring, with roughly 12 months of construction once everything gets underway, and open for business in time for the state fair in 2027. The developer, we have identified $1 million in TIF proceeds upon completion of the project. The builder would have to waive the discretionary formula, which is the phase-in of taxes over 7 years, where in year 1, year 2, they would pay 25% of their property taxes, and 2 years at 50%, followed by 2 years at 75%, then phased into 100 in year 7. They will immediately begin paying full assessment as soon as they're done. They would agree to a minimum assessed valuation to generate property taxes sufficient to make this TIF district work. And then, once everything is up and operating, those TIF proceeds will repay what has been invested in the infrastructure. And the Walmart outlot, no specific plans for the type of building to go out there. But I think if you look at what is in front of every other Walmart in the state, you consider retail, restaurant type development, I would expect something similar to that in the future, but nothing is nailed down at this time. Any questions?
Go ahead, Commissioner Smith.
Ted, with the hotel being located on the west side of that property, what prevents it from including that whole block, if you will, of including that in the district? Is it because there's nothing planned and you don't want to tie up?
That's it. So
The
it
TIF.
makes more sense just to identify the parcel that we know is going to be developed immediately, and that Walmart outlot as well. We know it will be developed in the near future, we just don't know when. So that other portion of the lot, we don't have plans for it. So
And that's not in a current
it's
district,
inside of
is
TIF. It is,
Oh,
yes,
it
it's
is.
inside TIF, the boundaries of TIF 3 and TIF 6.
Okay.
It is, yes.
That's kind of what happened before with the larger TIF area on 3, and then the development didn't happen fast enough. And
So
there
then we
wasn't enough
consolidated
time
them, yeah.
in the 20-year time frame to make it make sense. So the discussion here was if there's not an active participant looking to come right away, why put it in there? Because once you get, 2-3 years down the road, the math really doesn't work to catch up anyway. So unless somebody was really actively looking to be a participant, you basically just have to ask for more money and then never end up using it, and so it complicates the formula. Because even if something like we saw in the other one, when the hotel task force first started, it was still trying to get in on the end of the available TIF that was left over, but by that time, the math didn't work to try and squeeze it in, unfortunately. Sure.
Right, and I would just bring up that a tax increment finance district can last for 20 years, or until the property taxes generated in the plan are repaid, whichever comes first. And we would look for about 2 years of time after creation of the TIF district and the completion of the project before we start collecting tax payments from those properties.
I know there's some things rumbling in the state legislature about review of TIFs and the opportunities and so on. So I think expediting it as quickly as you are probably good measure.
Probably not a bad idea.
Kind of know what we know now. So,
Any other questions, comments? Yeah, thank you for working on that, Ted. I know it's a long process.
Right?
It's been
This
a,
is something that's been 3 years
yeah,
in the making since we made first contact with the developers.
Well, and to that point, you know, Commissioner Smith, you bring up a good point, you know, there's gonna be a lot of scrutiny likely. And so between the fact that Huron has a history with TIFs and the fact that it's probably gonna be looked at pretty closely, I do wanna commend Ted and the developers for, I mean, the math and the homework that he calls it to go into it, you know, all those little things about the money doesn't go out until the development is done. If their tax value comes in too low, they have to petition to a higher value. They don't qualify for the discretionary formula. You know, all those things that not every TIF is automatically a good thing, but when a TIF is carefully constructed properly, it can be a really valuable tool. And I think they worked really hard based on past experience to make sure that this one should work.
Mayor, I'd move to approve the resolution presented.
Second?
okay.
Just want to note the resolution actually creates the district, so then we send this off to the Department of Revenue.
Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Luke.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. Thanks again, Ted.
Thank you, Ted.
Okay, we're gonna move on to departmental items. 8.1, consider Slide Hill lease agreement between John Dirksen and the Huron Parks and Recreation Department for property located at 7th Street and Lawn Ridge Southeast. I got Chad Schroeder on his way up, and this says Slide Hill lease agreement. We all know it as Toboggan Hill.
That is correct, yeah. Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. So this agreement is, needed to be renewed in November of this year. And it's a 3-year agreement that we usually have, but our city attorney reviewed it and made the decision that we need to have this just be a 1-year lease agreement at this time while we review our contract, our current lease. I'm having him go through all of our leases and all of our short-term and long-term lease agreements as they expire. And he identified that this one we need to look at just a little bit. So we're gonna do a 1-year lease agreement to get through 2025, and we will be back in 2026 for a new 3-year agreement, or maybe longer.
Just so, you want to explain, there's a picture on the board here. You want to explain why we're doing this?
So if you look, we're on Lawn Ridge, and if you look down at the very bottom is John Dirksen's row crop area. And if you see the tall grass down here, when those rocket sleds get going down the hill, they get out into this field out in this area here.
Yes.
So we have an agreement put together that allows us to use this area during the winter months.
Okay.
So, and we renew it every 3 years. We've done that for several years.
Yep.
And so it is now expired, and we're gonna get snow this weekend, right? So we better have something.
Trace.
Chad.
Trace them out.
Yeah, just a
Chad.
trace to a foot.
You can sit down now.
Right.
And so what we're approving tonight is the same agreement we've had for several years. The only change is we're doing it just for 1 year, so that potentially next year, the attorney would come back with some different language, but for this year, we're just approving
Yep.
essentially the same agreement we've been doing.
Correct.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Luke.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. Thank you,
Thank
Chad.
you.
Thanks, Chad.
Moving on to 8.2, the presentation of the water and sewer rate study update by Banner Associates, and consider approval of the recommendations provided by the study for water and sewer rates. City Engineer Brett Runke, you want to open this up?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So tonight we have with us Tanya Miller and Taylor Furr with Banner and Associates. They've been working hard on our water and sewer rate study, and they're going to provide a summary of the results of that and then recommendations moving forward. We do a rate study every 5 years, and that kind of provides us the roadmap for our rate resolution as we put those rates together each year, you know. So it's very important that we look through this, and they've done a great job. I want to make a note, like when I first started with the company I was with, Tanya was there, and that was in the early 2000s, and she was the rate study person then. And here we are 20 years later, and she's still doing those rate studies and knocking them out. She's very good at what she does, and yeah, take it away, Tanya.
Thank you, Brett. Good to see you. Yeah, good to be here. So we've got handouts with us. Does anybody not have a copy of the presentation that would like to look at? Perfect. So I'm Tanya. This is Taylor with me this evening, and thank you for having us. I also want to compliment your staff. We have been working closely with not only the engineering department and Brett, but staff at the wastewater facility and water facility, so Rob and Dave, and then also finance. It ties all those people together and brings everybody kind of into agreement on where things have historically been, so we can look at historical financials and make sure that, you know, we understand what the cash needs are, working with engineering to understand what capital improvements are coming up to keep your water and wastewater system, you know, working well and in good condition. And then just kind of tying that all together in this rate study. And so, as Brett said, I've got about 20 years experience in water, wastewater. Taylor's got about 5. And so we're gonna go through the water portion first, and then we'll go through the wastewater portion. I know this is not the most exciting stuff, but we're gonna try to make it interesting and at least help the commission understand why the rate recommendations are being made and how they were established. And so with that, we'll go ahead and get started, if you want to go on to the second slide. So the need for the study. As Brett said, we've done this 5 years ago. We're doing it now again. That 5-year period provides a good opportunity for a look at the financials. And the basic need is that, you know, you want to establish as a commission fair and equitable rates for your customers that recover enough capital to fund the annual operating and maintenance expenses, but also maintain that infrastructure, so that you don't have catastrophic failures or, you know, very large expensive things break down. You're maintaining it and maintaining that system. Both these systems are enterprise funds, so they're not intended to make a bunch of money. There's not a whole bunch of money brought in and transferred out to other areas. They are intended to fund themselves, and they do it. So that's the water department funding the water and the wastewater department funding the wastewater. So that this last study completed in 2020, that 5-year period is up, so it was time to do a study again. And so the study period for this study that we just completed is 2025 through 2030. So, and in Huron, as we get started, something to keep in mind, you have 7 different customer classes that are utilized. That provides a really nice segregation of the different customer types and helps us do a good detailed job analyzing the data. So there's residential, multifamily, so that's like your, you know, duplexes, twin homes, fourplexes, apartments types of things, commercial businesses, medical, so, you know, your hospitals, clinics, city, so that's the actual city water usage, parks and recs and things like that. Governmental, which is more schools, and then the industrial, your larger, you know, industrial customers. Some are smaller, but considered to have more potentially high strength waste. So, and then the last thing to note is within the commercial and the residential class, there is a segregation for those within city limits, as well as those outside city limits. We're not gonna go into a lot of detail on the rural customers, but the way the ordinances are set up, the way we looked at things last time, and it seems very similar, is they pay a multiplier, a 1.3 multiplier on the rate, and you'll see this as we go through things. Just with, you know, they get the benefit of having that in-town water sewer service, but since they're out of city limits, pay a little bit more of a premium for that convenience, not amenity, not being residents. So with that, I'll turn it over to Taylor.
Starting with the water system, first we took a look at the water use by class. Huron has significant industries, and so that's reflected in industrial being the largest portion of water use. The second largest is the residential class, and then the remaining distribution, about an even split between the commercial and the multifamily, and the remaining are much smaller users. So because they're the largest users, the bulk of the cost for operating the water system is driven by the industrial and residential customers. So the other part of planning, the revenue requirements, is the capital improvements that are planned for the next 5 years. The largest portion of that is water main replacements, which is planned annually essentially. And then upcoming in 2028, there is a large project plan for water treatment plant rehabilitation. The staff at Huron does a good job of maintaining their system and their equipment, and so keeping a plan of what is to be rehabbed and replaced as part of that. And there's a couple other smaller projects upcoming that are noted as well. So in 2028, the combination of the water main replacement and the treatment plant rehab project creates a big jump in the capital improvements required. The cash flow in order to fund those projects is a big driver in the water study, and with a jump like that, it is difficult to achieve without rate increases. So the water department expenses, this graph is from expenses from 2025, but we're looking at it as kind of a typical year. Huron purchases the majority of its water from Mid-Dakota Rural Water System, so this cost is significant in the department's expenses. Capital improvements is the largest expense, and salaries for employees is also a significant portion. The remaining expenses in those smaller segments are associated with general operation of the water treatment, distribution, and billing systems.
So on the cost of service analysis, so this is kind of how we get into looking at things. We take all of the expenses that occur in a typical annual year, and we allocate them in a water study out to the different customers based on how much of a peak they place on the system. So in a sense, and it's not individual customers, it's the classes. So when you look at a residential class, there's a lot of watering and other irrigation needs in the summer. So when it's dry, they often place a very high peak on the system. And typically that residential class is the highest peak. So they're the costliest to serve because you have to oversize the system so that they can use all that water on peak days. But when you look at kind of an average usage over the year, you can't collect as much because those peaks are just a few days. So that's why we say they cost the system the most, because it's got to be oversized to serve them. Where you look at a customer that's maybe a larger industry and has a steadier usage, it's easier to plan and size the system for them. So that's kind of the two extremes. So that's how we look at a water study, kind of what the cost of service is. It's those customers that have the higher peaks that are a little more costly to serve. And so then we can also look at, in addition to those peaks, we look at just basic connection charges. So just connecting to the system, that base charge every month that you pay depending on your meter size. And if your meter size is larger, you pay a higher cost because just the cost of the meter and having it is more expensive. But in addition, just because you are using more of the system, you flow more water through a larger meter, that kind of monthly base connection charge is higher. And so with that background, I'll let Taylor go into some of the findings from the study.
So after performing the cost of service, the findings had three main recommendations. First, to increase the monthly customer service charge for the 3, 4, 6, and 8-inch meters. The larger sizes, like Tanya said, they have a higher cost to replace. And in recent years especially, the increase to those meter costs has been significant. And so the previous increases just were not keeping pace with that. So increasing those is first. The other recommendation that was noted was the city water use. The city customer class should pay the same per 1,000-gallon rate as other customer classes. Like we said, irrigation is one of the main drivers of peak, and so use, particularly by Parks and Rec in the summertime, makes the city customer class costly to serve for that reason. And so the previous reduced rate does not recover the cost of serving that class. Lastly, Dakota Provision East reduced water rate is also not generating enough revenue to cover the cost of service. Dakota Provisions is a large water customer with steady use, and so for that reason, a reduced rate is justified, but the level to which it was reduced was not recovering the cost of service from those findings, and so the reduced rate should be increased slightly. So the goals of the water study, Banner met with city staff to determine what the city's goals and needs are for the water study. The first goal is to adjust rates for cost of living increases and projected increased costs to purchase water from Mid-Dakota Rural Water System. Secondly, to maintain cash reserves at no less than 50% of the annual operating revenue during the study period, with the ultimate goal of achieving 75% at the end of the study period. Third, to generate positive end-of-year cash at the end of study period. exceed coverage ratio requirements of 1.2 to 1.3 during the study period. Coverage ratio requirements refers to the amount of funds that is needed to make debt payments on previous improvement projects. Funding agencies require that the city maintain funds enough to pay the debt payment plus 10%, so a 1.1 factor. City staff want to have excess of the minimum requirement of 1.1, which is why the 1.2 to 1.3 goal was set at that point. And lastly would be to implement the general findings of the cost of service analysis. So from those goals, we developed 2 rate options. Option number 1 implements the cost of service recommendations that we talked about, which was increase the monthly meter charge for those large meter sizes, increase the city and Dakota Provisions lease usage rates. Secondly, option 1 maintains unrestricted cash reserves at no less than 50% of operating revenues and increases to near 69% at the end of the study. So this first option doesn't quite reach the goal of 75% at the end of the study due to the high capital improvements costs in 2028. The cash flow doesn't work to hit that point without significant large increases in option 1. So with that in mind, in option 2, we eliminate some of the capital improvements costs in 2028 would be the water main portion of $1.61 million. That option was discussed, reviewed with the city, and the city indicated that eliminating that water main project from the study period, it can be postponed without a detriment to the long-term capital improvements plan. And removing it from the short-term capital improvements plan allows us to improve the cash flow and reduces the amount of rate increases that would be needed to meet the goals of the study. So option 2 also implements the same option, cost of service recommendations as option 1 with those large meter charge increases and city and Dakota Provisions East rate increases. And this option does hit that 75% of operating revenues by the end of the study period. So now we get into what the proposed rates are for options 1 and 2. So these are the per 1,000 gallons usage rates that would be paid by each customer class. The first line at the top shows what the current rates are. So current rates are $4.91 for in-city customer classes, with the city rate being lower at $2.79. The rural rates on that 30% higher are $6.38, and the Dakota Provisions reduced rate is $4.02. So option number 1 in 2026 would increase the in-city rate to $5.18 and also raise the city customer class to that same level. The rural rates would hit $6.73, and the Dakota Provisions reduced rate is $4.26. So as shown in that last column in the table, the Dakota Provisions rate remains a reduced rate, but is just increased from where it's at right now. So by 2030, in option number 1, the in-city rate is $6.54, the rural rate is $8.50, and the Dakota Provisions rate is $5.48. So in option 2, which has the smaller rate increases compared to option 1, the 2026 rate is $5.08 for in-city, $6.61 for rural, $4.18 for Dakota Provisions. And by 2030, those rates get to $5.83 for within city limits customers, $7.58 for rural rates, and $4.89 for Dakota Provisions. So depending on your customer class, the proposed rates for option 2 end up about 60 to 90 cents less than option 1. So next we have the increases to the proposed monthly customer charge. Both of these options strictly follow the cost of service study, so both options here for increases are the same. Current monthly charges are $20.21 for the smallest meters, and that goes up to $242.96 for the large 8-inch meter. Rural customers are at that same 30% higher factor. For both options, number 1 and 2, the monthly charge in 2026 increases to $20.61 for the smallest meters and $312.98 For the largest meters, oops, excuse me, that's 2030. 26, the largest meters is 252.68. And then by 2030, the small meters are at 22.98. And the 8-inch meters are at 312.98. So the increase for the 3 through 8-inch meter sizes is at a higher rate than the lower, which we'll get, have another table next to look at the percentages. So the percent increases for the proposed usage rates for option 1 and 2 are shown here. So first thing to point out is in 2026, the city rate is at its own high, quite high percentage in order to get up to the same rate as all other classes pay. So for other classes and for the rest of the years beyond 2026, in option 1, the increases are between 5.5% to 6.5% for all your customer classes, and the Dakota Provisions rate is an increase at 6 to 7%. Again, at a slightly higher percentage than the rest of the classes so that it can increase to recover the cost of service. And in option 1 specifically, the increases jump up in 2028 and 2029 because in order to cash flow those high capital improvements in 2028. So when that, when the capital improvements are reduced in option 2, the increases are at a straight 3.5% annually for all customer classes and slightly higher at 4% for Dakota Provisions. The percent increase for the monthly customer charges are next, and again, those are the same between options 1 and option 2, and are 2 to 3% for the small meter sizes and 8 to 10% for the high meter or the large meter sizes. And again, this is to recover the higher replacement costs for the larger meter sizes. This graph shows water department end of year cash by year for the study period from 2025 to 2030. The blue darker bars are the end of year cash flow if no rate increases are implemented. So if everything were to stay the same as it is currently. And then the lighter orange and yellow bars are options 1 and 2 for the proposed rate increases. So like we've talked about, because of the high capital improvement costs in 2028, if there are no rate increases, the water department would experience negative cash flow starting in 2028, and it would remain negative through the study period. The orange bars there in the middle is rate option 1, and the yellow is rate option 2 on the end. So those both with increases show smaller negative cash flows in 2028, and those recover to positive cash flows in 2030 by the end of the study period. So another chart for showing the cash reserves. Again, the blue is cash reserves if current rates were maintained, and those show a significant drop in 2028 and continue dropping through 2030, nearly depleted by the end of the study period. The orange line is rate option number 1, which has still a sharp decline in 2028, but does come back up to start recovering by 2030. And then option 2 in the gray, when we take out some of those capital improvements, it's a much more gradual decrease and will recover.
Can I have,
Yeah.
can I ask a couple questions, give you a minute to catch your breath? First question would be the water main replacement. What would the advantage be to doing that? Is it, what would the advantage be to replacing that in 2028? The cost of it down the road, the inflation factor, or?
Right, we would, we're doing replacements every year, right? With the goal to eliminate cast iron pipe out of our system and AC pipe out of our system, right? So it would just, we would get that done sooner, right? Inflationary costs will increase every year too, so the longer we go out, the more that'll increase. So it's just, it extends our process.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously you gotta a target date of 2028 in there, I just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, that was just every year, so what we're doing is we're just taking 2028 out and we're sliding them all back one year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then the other target of 75% reserve, where is that derived from?
That's a good question. Typically what we see is just in general, there's guidance that, you know, cities should try to maintain 40 to like 140% of cash reserves in their, basically it's in their bank account or their savings account. So that if something would happen, you know, let's say if something breaks down at the water or wastewater plant, in this case the water plant, you know, it could be $100,000 to $200,000 item easy or more. Or if there's something catastrophic that happens, you know, a water main break or something else, it's very expensive to replace. And so that's why you want those healthy cash reserves. The other thing those cash reserves do is you can kind of see, if we go back, and you go back one slide, or no, sorry, go forward one slide. On those cash reserves, you can see them kind of going up and down often, and that's often by $1 million or more bouncing around. And so those cash reserves help kind of minimize the need for the rates to bounce around to match the capital improvement needs. It kind of provides that stabilizer where on, you know, years when you've got a lot of capital improvements, you can pull from reserves a little bit and not have to, you know, need so much money from your rates that you have to get extra from to do dramatic increases. But at the same time, if you've got a year where you have a little less capital improvements, you can put a little more money in there. And so it's just a guide. I think the city picked a really healthy level, trying to target 75%. You know, we started the study, I think, at 80. And with the first rates came back looking at 80, I think staff felt like, they're like, oh, it feels like that's kind of a little bit too high of a rate increase. I think we could dial back a little bit and look more at that 75% level.
Is 75 common with municipalities?
Yeah, I would say anywhere around that 70 to 80%.
Best practice.
Is probably what we
So-
typically see most doing. And a lot of it too depends on the size of the community. You know, a small community might want to have a little more because they don't have as much
Right.
that they're bringing in, so their reserves are smaller. So the impact of a capital improvement or a maintenance, emergency maintenance repair could be quite a bit higher. That said too, if it's a very large community, you know, even larger than Huron, that percentage might be a little bit lower. But yeah, 75% is a really good target.
Okay. Thank you.
Really good question.
On both of these slides, when you have the dark blue current cash, does that assume the 1.6 million in 2028?
Yeah, that would assume the same capital improvement schedule, just with less revenue to make it up.
Thank you.
And again, absolutely no rate increases going forward, so that's why it just drops off.
So the last thing for the water study, we have the comparisons for rates that show what Huron's current 2025 rate is in the orange bar. The two proposed rate options in the green bars starting in 2026. And then the blue bars are area communities in South Dakota that are similarly sized, similar demographics, and what their rates are. So all of the area community comparisons are at 2025 rates. Most of these communities will increase their rates in 2026 as well. We just don't know what those numbers are, so those aren't accounted for here. So starting off, we have a typical residential customer with a typical use of 5,000 gallons per month. Options 1 and 2 go up slightly, but keep Huron in the same position comparatively, right in the median of those communities. So a typical commercial customer would have 14,000 gallons of water use per month. The proposed options bump Huron up a couple of spots, but when you look at the dollar amounts, it's right in line with all of those other communities. Next is a typical multifamily customer with 21,100 gallons per month. Again, the rate options for both increases keep Huron in the same position, right in the center. We have a typical medical or governmental customer at 30,000 gallons of use per month. The current in orange is kind of at the bottom of center. Huron, both of the options for Huron keep near the same position and very comparable dollar amounts.
Are all those communities, if I might
Yep,
interrupt
yep.
you, I'm sorry. Are all those communities also utilizing water from the Oahe or the river to blend that?
Oh,
Mitchell doesn't.
there'd be a variety on there. I know
Yeah, Aberdeen has wells, they don't have river water.
Pierre would have Missouri River water, so they'd be similar to Mid-Dakota.
Right.
Just kind of thinking that's a factor that we really can't control when the cost of
Right.
that water coming
Yeah.
to us.
Absolutely. I'm trying to think if there's any other communities that buy portions from rural water. I know like Aberdeen's buying some from Webb, and
Yeah.
that they're looking at buying more, but they're in the same predicament as you in that sense.
Sure. Thank you.
The last comparison we have for the water study is the large industrial customer with a use of 17.8 million gallons per month. The rate increases that are proposed keeps Huron in the same position and is again bottom of the center.
All right, with that, we were gonna pause and go on to the sewer rate study. You can ask questions at any time. If you wanna ask any about the water, we can do that now before going on. All right, you'll have another chance at the end, so don't worry. So we're gonna kind of do this all over again, but this time it's for sewer. So now that you've got it down, it's gonna be easy. So, for sewer use, it's the same type of thing, where you look at the usage by class, and the industrial class is about 50% of the city's sewer usage. Residential's, also very strong, about 30%, and then multifamily, commercial, and the other classes make up much smaller portions. So these are the capital improvement projects that the sewer department has identified for the next 5 years. A lot of this is just annual ongoing maintenance, which the city has been really good about maintaining their system when we look at Huron compared to other communities. And so you've got things like manhole lining you can see going on every year there, as well as the cleaning of the collection system and sewer main lining. Some other projects that are more significant in 27 and 28, there's the sewer in Dakota Avenue, that replacement project is over 2 years, that's about a $4 million project. The lift station replacement plan for 29 is pretty significant, and then down at the very bottom, the wastewater pumping station, that's a $6 million project planned over 2 years. And that is replacement of an aging pumping station out the wastewater plant, about 90 years old. And so, and it might be rehabilitated, I think there's still design going on, but just that project is very needed with the age of that structure. So, in looking at this, you can see that on an annual basis, it varies from about 3 million up to, over 5. And so needing to cash flow that over the study period. I'll tell you ahead of time with this one, there was none identified that really could be removed on this one. So with the options, we're looking at different alternatives. So when you look at the expenses that are planned, so the capital improvements are significant, they're about 57%. But the other major expenses, you've got your labor and staff that you're paying, so salaries and wages. There's debt as well. So for the wastewater system that just underwent major improvements about 5 years ago, and so now those debt payments have kicked in, so that's a large portion of the budget. Other things are just annual repairs and maintenance, as well as utilities are pretty significant on the wastewater side. There's a lot of pumping involved, plus all the aeration for treatment, and so that electrical cost is high. So for the cost of service analysis for sewer, we look at it from a completely kind of different approach for the kind of national guidelines and recommendations. And so instead of those peaking factors, we look at wastewater strength. And so what wastewater, when it needs to be treated, you've got a residential type customer, maybe a general commercial customer that, you kind of know what what it's gonna take to get that wastewater treated. Some of the other customers, like some of the industrial customers, will have additional contaminants in that wastewater, and that may take additional cost to remove. And so we look at what the typical strength is, and then if there's additional strength, should some of those customers pay higher. We're gonna go through all that. And so when we did that cost of service analysis, and we can I should back up one thing. So when we take all those wastewater costs every year, just a typical year like water, we allocate those costs out, and we can allocate them to customer charges. So things like the billing department, it costs the same to prepare a bill, whether it's, a typical residential customer or a very large customer. So we can allocate all types of costs like that and some other just basic things that you have to have that wastewater system available to the customer class. But then there's other things we can allocate out to volume, like pumping costs. But then we get into allocating some of those costs out to, you know, what's it take to maintain the blowers out of the wastewater treatment plant? Or what does it take to maintain the anaerobic digestion system when they have to clean that on a, you know, not annual basis, but definitely every once in a while that's gotta be cleaned out. So we can take and allocate all those costs to the different areas of treatment. So in doing that, we are able to determine, first of all, that monthly customer service charge and what it should be. And the first finding of the cost of service was that monthly charge was not recovering the cost of providing that service. So it indicated to us that that monthly charge needs to come up. The other thing it indicated, or pardon me, that monthly customer charge does not need to come up. Getting ahead of myself. So that was stable. So that could, you know, other than inflationary costs, to just kind of keep up with general increasing costs, that could stay the same. But when we looked at that sewer rate, so the per 1,000 gallon charge, that volume charge, that rate was not recovering the cost of service. And so that's what we needed to increase at a higher rate than an inflationary cost. So the other thing we could kind of break down and look at then is the surcharges. And so that's where we really get into the cost of providing treatment. And so in Huron's ordinances, which are typical for what most communities are, they define what a normal domestic strength wastewater is. That's what they call it. And so there's a thing called BOD, it's biological oxygen demand. This is where I will get way too nerdy too quick, so I'll try to keep that simple. But it's identified at 250 milligrams per liter. And as long as the wastewater is less strength than that, it's considered normal domestic waste. If it's over that, it takes more oxygen, power, cost for the city's treatment system to remove. And so it shows that that cost is what we found it to be in this study was 0.387 cents per pound of BOD. The previous study indicated it was $4.35. Part of that is the actual cost of the treatment improvements were slightly less than they were thought to be when we started this whole process 5 years ago, so that's part of the reason for the change. Total suspended solids, or TSS, is another significant component that's looked at, and that showed that that rate should decrease from 0.491 down to 0.373. For ammonia and TSS, they indicated they should stay relatively the same, so no change there. And then the final finding of the cost of service is that the last study, we recommended the city implement a monthly charge for pre-treatment program customers. So the wastewater department has to run and maintain a program for 7 customers that are in a pre-treatment program because they have high strength waste. And because of that, the state mandates that this program occur, that the city monitor them. They have to send tests into the state, and the city has to oversee that and complete some of the paperwork. And so there's time and effort involved with that and there's staff costs. And so the city did implement those costs into that monthly pre-treatment program, and so it's recovering those costs. Previously, it was about 50-50. In this study, we moved it up just a little bit, so the city is recovering about 60% of those costs. But it was not a significant change or increase. So when we met with staff to go over the sewer study, they also set the following goals for that portion of the study. And one was to adjust rates to account for cost of living increases, and that's the salary adjustments that need to be paid to city staff to keep up with inflation and cost of living. To also maintain that cash reserve level at no less than 50% with the goal of 75% at the end. And that 50% kind of throughout, the idea is you might drop down a little bit during the study, but by the end you want to be at 75%. Again, generate positive end of year cash at the end of the study, so don't be in the red in your annual operating number. Again, exceed that coverage ratio requirement up to 1.2, 1.3, and I think Taylor did a great job explaining that. And then implement the findings of the cost of service. So for our 2 rate study options that we have, the first one is looking at more of what is a uniform increase, that if we did the same percentage increase in the monthly customer charge and the usage rate, just with the idea of getting those rates up kind of across the board to meet cash needs at the end of the study period and hit that 75% goal. And then we adjusted just the surcharge rate in option 1 for the cost of service. So that was option 1. Option 2 is different because we adjust the monthly customer service charge per the cost of service and the usage rate per cost of service. So the monthly customer charge stays lower. It's not as much of an increase. You're going to see a higher increase on that per 1,000 gallon volume rate. Again, hitting that 75% goal and adjusting the surcharge rates per cost of service. So putting that into numbers, this table is laid out the same as the other one was. Current rates within city per 1,000 gallons of $4.27. Dakota Provisions does get a reduced rate, a pretty significant one, $2.27 per thousand. The reason for that large difference is they discharge directly into the kind of far end of the treatment system. So none of that wastewater from Dakota Provisions East, where that rate is charged, none of it flows through the collection system, none of it goes through the lift stations, it's not even going through pre-treatment or pumped out there. It just comes into the anaerobic ponds and then flows through the rest of the system via gravity. So that's why they get, or why that reduced rate is justified. With option 1, that rate increases to $4.47 per 1,000 gallons for the customers within city limits, and the Dakota Provisions rate increases to $2.34. By 2030, that jumps up to $5.35 per 1,000 gallons for in-city customers, and $2.63 for Dakota Provisions. So looking at option 2, this is the recommended rate, and you're gonna see a larger jump here, and that's because we're putting that rate increase burden, or we're generating the revenue that needs to be generated by placing that rate increase in the per 1,000 gallon rate. So the 2026 rate jumps up to $4.80 in town per 1,000 gallons and up to $2.34 for Dakota Provisions. And you'll see Dakota Provisions isn't seeing that jump because, again, they've got that discounted rate. For 2030, that in-town rate jumps up to $7.66 per 1,000 gallons, and the Dakota Provision rate jumps up to $2.63. So for the proposed customer service charge per month, with the option 1, it's that even across the board increase, so it's going from $23.02 for customers in town and Dakota Provisions. It's the same for all that per customer charge. In 2026, it'll go to $24.08, and in 2030, it'll jump up to $28.82. Now, for option 2, we're following cost of service, so we're keeping that low. We're actually having a decrease in that monthly customer service charge, and I'll get into that why of that in just in a minute when we look at things. But it would drop down to $20.63, and then increase back up to $23.76. So part of the idea with this, because the cost of service showed that, while you're dropping it actually down, which you hardly ever see rates decrease. When you see the monthly billing, it still is typically all for about one class, a slight increase, because you're putting that burden in the volume rate. But what this does is it places more of the rate increase in the higher volume customers. So a lot of your, your large commercial businesses, your larger industries and things, or not larger industries, because the Dakota Provisions is your largest and they're going to reduce. But your larger users are going to, bear more of the burden of the rate increase with this. And that's reflecting what the cost of service study shows it should be. As we get into the percentage increases and the comparisons, I think you're going to see how it reflects that and how it's not as significant as you might fear. So on a percentage basis, with the usage rates, option 1, that's where we've got this across the board 4.6% increase for the customers in city limits and the rural rural rates. Dakota Provisions is a 3% increase on that usage rate, so just an annual inflationary. When we look at option 2 on the usage rates, this is where you're going to see that more significant jump. We've got anywhere from 11.6 to 12.4 annually. And so on the Dakota Provisions rate, it's just the 3% inflationary. If we look at that customer's service charge, so that monthly charge, for option 1, again, it's that 4.6%, just that uniform rate across the board. Dakota Provisions inflation 3. And you'll see here now on the monthly customer charge for option 2, the recommended option, there's actually a 9.3% decrease. That first year to kind of make that correction and drop it back down. And then it goes to more of an inflationary increase after that, so kind of varying from 2.3 up to 3.6%. So part of the idea here too is, this is going to be a benefit any of your residents that are maybe a single person living in a home or on a fixed income. This is going to be a little more favorable and fair to that type of a customer. So surcharges, just want to pull this up. So this is your high strength customers. You've only got, there's a couple in town, so this fee is used. It is part of the revenue, and I'll call that out again in just a little bit, but we're showing that dropping from what the current rates are for BOD and TSS down to what was recommended in 2026, the .387 and the .373, and then slowly having 3% annual increases to bring those rates up, similar to what they are today. In 2030, the BOD would be up to .436, and the TSS would be up to .42. For the monthly pretreatment customers, so off to the right there, you see what each of those customers pay a month as a fee, just to maintain or to fund that program or a portion of it. And we're proposing just a 2% annual increase to that, so that when you look at the historical costs for that program, it doesn't look like the inflationary costs have been quite as bad. And so that's why we recommended only a 2% increase.
For the ammonia and the fog, why do you not have an increase there?
It looks like those costs are recovering the cost of providing treatment, and when we look at the comparison regionally, it just looks like right now they're kind of they're at a nice spot, and there's no justification right now to change. So, good question. So looking at end of year cash, so this is kind of, when the year finishes, are you in the red, you in the black? And so if you're above the bar graph, you're operating in the black. If you're below, you're in the red. With the large Dakota Avenue improvements and some of the other capital needs in 2027 and 2028, you can see that's where the big dip is. This is where there's that benefit of having those reserve levels, where you can pull from reserves to kind of keep that, take advantage of not having to jump rates around too much to be able to fund improvements. And so, if you don't do anything, you don't increase rates, you're depleting, or you've got end of year cash negative in most years. If we implement the rate increases, this is where by the end of the study period, even though you've depleted cash, you've now got positive cash being generated and going forward and be able to build up reserves. So when we look at those reserves, this is essentially the sewer department bank account. If you don't do any rate increases, by 2030, that dark blue line, reserves drop down to 1.73, which is not recommended. And so with both option 1 and option 2, we're hitting that target, that 75% in 2030, getting reserves back up just over 4 million. So here's the comparisons, and I think with the changes recommended to keep that customer service charge per month low and increasing the volume rates more, this is gonna be really helpful for the commission to see. And so this, with wastewater, you don't use as much because it's based on winter billing. So you don't have to factor in all the irrigation stuff. So this is why for a typical residential customer, the usage is only 3,500 gallons a month, not 5,000. And so with this $3,500 a month bill, this is where in this customer class, you will see the proposed rate for 2026 actually drops ever so slightly. It's not a significant change, it's more of a small adjustment. So, and then in future years, it would start to increase again and go back up. This is for your 10,000 gallons per month user, which is a typical customer in the commercial class. Again, they're gonna see a little bit more now where even though the monthly charge dropped, the volume rate's gone up enough where they're gonna see a little bit of an increase. And so that current charge in 2025, $61.45, goes up for recommended option 2 to $63.82. So still less than option 1, but. Then for the kind of next level of customer, that'd be the multifamily at about 18,300 gallons a month. Again, rates going up just ever so slightly, but I think the other thing to point out is most of Huron's wastewater rates, you guys are towards the right side of the graph. You're pretty economical, and so while we are proposing increases, you're still staying below that median or that average. Medical governmental customers use about 28,000 gallons a month. And so that comparison, or that shows that you would be increasing from almost near the bottom up to just kind of right at the median. So from about $138 up to around the proposed and recommended option 2 around $150. And then this shows your large industrial customer. Again, they get that discounted rate. And so they will see an increase, but because of where they're located and not using the collection system, and it's also that reduced rate, they really, compared to the other communities in the area, they have a very, very economical sewer rate. And so while it's going up a little bit, it's not, as you can tell, significant, or it would be much, much less than in other communities. And then this just shows that BOD comparison. So historically, you've been kind of right in the middle of the road for BOD. And so even with this correction, you're still maintaining that same spot. And for TSS, it's similarly, you're getting up a little bit towards the higher end, but when you look at what it's actually costing, and you bring it back down, you're right around that median level for TSS. Not as many communities have an ammonia and a fog charge, and so it makes it a little harder to do a comparison. And so gathering information from Aberdeen and Watertown, Huron's ammonia rate is less, but you usually also don't have as many ammonia violations. The financials we showed earlier, those surcharge numbers are part of that annual revenue, and that's part of the money the city brings in. Very little funds are brought in from ammonia, so having it remain steady is also not as concerning. And then for fog, for that, part of it is it's very difficult. We don't have the data to do a real detailed fog analysis. And so when you look at the comparisons, Aberdeen has a fog charge, and so does Sioux Falls. And so Huron's rate seems reasonable. It's kind of right in the middle. And so that's the other justification for getting that rate at $1 per pound. So kind of tying everything together, kind of the key points or the reasons for the increases when we go through the water.
Yeah, so for the water study, like we said, the recommended option is option 2. It meets all of the goals that were set in the study, increasing rates for cost of living adjustments and anticipated increases to purchase water from Mid-Dakota, maintains the cash reserves at no less than 50% and meeting that 75% at the end of the study period, generating the positive end-of-year cash throughout the study, or by the end of the study period, exceeding the debt coverage ratio throughout the entire study period, and implementing the general findings of the cost of service analysis.
And so for sewer, option 2 is also recommended. It does the same thing. It maintains those cash reserves. They do increase to 69%, not quite at 75, but at 69% is still a very good number to hit. And the reason for that, not hitting that goal completely on target, was trying to minimize that rate increase and not have it be quite as significant. It also generates that net positive income at the end of the study period, meets the coverage ratio requirements, and implements the findings of cost of service. So hopefully you know a whole lot more about rates than you probably ever wanted to. Do you have any questions or anything else that doesn't make sense you'd like a little more information on?
I had a wonderful tutorial this afternoon from Superintendent Rieger.
Wonderful.
And this was great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd like to see on page 14 and page 30, those annual percentage increases. That's great, because after all of this, guess what people look at? Number 14 and number 30.
No, they do.
Yeah, and that's a big deal, because like you said, we have lots of fixed incomes, older singles or young families. So on both sides of the teeter-totters, looking at 13 and 30 and 14. So I appreciate that very much. Any questions, comments for the gals? Tanya, Taylor, you did a great job.
Thank you. It's good
Brett?
to see you guys again.
You pinched it a little bit there, but just a little bit. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are we taking any legal action on this tonight? Or is this just presentation?
Yes, we would like to, we'd like a recommendation, basically from the commission.
Okay.
Basically approval of the recommendations.
Sure.
So
Okay.
accept the study and talk about the 2 options, is that what you're saying? Or just accept the
Motion
study?
to accept the recommended option 2.
Accept the study and the recommendations of the study.
But as far as option 1 or 2,
That's the recommendation.
Recommendation is option 2.
Okay.
Okay.
I would make a motion to accept recommended option number 2.
Okay.
I don't know if I said that right.
You know what she's saying.
Got it.
You got it.
Second.
Okay, any questions, comments further? Roll call vote, please. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Just take your
Jordan Woodbury, Dakota Provisions. Mayor Robish, I think the report was excellently done. Danya Taylor, good work. With the different options, I'm pretty sure Dakota Provisions knows, what direction we want to go. But could we have a week and go through everything? Would that be okay because it sounds like we want to decide tonight that option 2, approved, done deal. And like I said, I'm pretty sure that we're gonna support that, but could we look at the numbers? Because it's pretty, they did a good job of laying everything out, but I'm pretty sure that's what we're gonna do and support. But
I mean, I guess I'm not sure what you're asking me here.
do we
We're
need to
gonna-
decide tonight, I guess?
That's gonna be table it for a week.
You want to table the whole thing?
That's
I wanna
my
table it.
request, not just the final decision.
Okay.
So we can go through, I'm pretty sure we know what we're gonna do, but,
Okay.
or what we wanna support.
Sure.
And it won't take long. I mean, we'd have it done by Wednesday. I just wanna make sure, but it's pretty cut and dry. So I'm not
Yeah.
looking to delay it, I'm just looking to verify.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah, because actually, the difference between option 1 and 2 are, and if you look at the chart on page 38, there's really not much difference.
No.
As in what the rate study they did with option 1 and 2, there really wasn't much effect to the east industry, correct, Tanya?
No, it's very.
No, and it doesn't look that way.
There's not much difference. between
Yeah,
the two.
it doesn't look that way. I'm just, if we can hold off until we go through everything.
And my concern to the commission is we need to move forward with the rate study so that we have the proper amount of readings before the end of the year, correct?
The rates resolution you need that effective January 1, yes.
Right,
So
so we would implement this to that rate resolution.
So I would say based on everything we've been through on this, I mean, I appreciate that the study looks at the fact that where east is located, it's less of an impact. I know that's been something you guys have asked, and I think if we could get to a position where we're not having any kind of animosity and this was supported by DPI, I think that 1 week is not gonna keep us from missing our deadline. So if they would like 1 week to review these numbers and if that could get us to move forward where.
We'd let you know by
have-
Wednesday. All it is I just wanna go through and make sure, because the way it looks, I'm fine with it, but.
Are we missing any Monday nights just because?
It'd have to be done by next Monday night in the sense of
Well,
publishing, because the
because of the
paper isn't
30
every day.
days.
Yeah, that's
I
part
have
of
a
the
20-day
problem.
publication period for a
Right.
resolution. So it has to be next Monday night.
And obviously, this is not
The
the
rate
only.
resolution
Yeah.
does.
No, there's approval to
Right.
Because of the 30
give me
days.
at
Right.
least the time to get it in the rates resolution.
And obviously, Dakota Provisions is one user, so that's not gonna be the only factor in our decision here, clearly. But I think just because of the amount of back and forth we've had over several years, my opinion would be if we could come back next week and vote on this with everybody in full support and feeling good, I think that would just be, it would feel a lot better for everybody involved if we could get all the animosity that we've had over the last couple of years behind us and move forward feeling good about it.
As long as our time frame doesn't
Yeah.
put us in jeopardy of the first of. Okay.
Are we addressing two separate things in this? One, the approval of the rates, or the approval of the study, and secondly, the approval of the recommendation?
I think my motion was just to go with the recommended option number 2. That was what I was
And
intending.
the study.
With the rate study.
Right, correct.
But I see what you're saying, Brian. Would there be any value to, is there a need to vote on accepting the study without making the secondary choice of choosing option 2, is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
And I don't know if there's any benefit to that, but.
probably isn't.
But I get what you're asking, yeah.
Just
I
didn't want
guess
to hold up their paycheck for a little.
it might not be, it might not be to a benefit, but is that where the direction is coming from to, is there, are you questioning the study or the recommendations? Not questioning even, I don't know if that's right.
Question it, Mayor Robish, but I just want to go through and wait. You know, there's two different options.
Yep.
Like I said, we're pretty much in line with option 2.
But you don't have a problem with the study in itself?
No,
Okay.
they did a good job.
That would be.
And the rates are fair. You
Yeah.
know, I'm not gonna come back here 6 months from now and argue that.
Yeah,
So
no,
they're
I
fair.
get that, I get that.
But I just wanna make sure, you know, that,
Yep,
and all I need is a week, but
Yeah.
more than likely, I'd let one of you know by Wednesday.
okay.
That's all I have. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a motion on the floor to accept the wage study and the recommendations.
Some rate study.
The rate study and the recommendations. Let's see, do we want to, I'm gonna call on my legal counsel right now and say, do we want to vote on that, or do we want to ask for a amendment to the motion?
Yeah, so Mayor, I had a little bit of trouble hearing just that last piece there. Was the motion seconded, or was it still waiting for a second?
No, it is seconded.
We have a motion.
Okay, so if there was a motion and a second, you would either need that motion to be withdrawn, or you would have a substitute motion that would be offered that would change the original motion or amend it in some way.
Okay.
So proper procedure, how would that be, how would you recommend doing that?
So if you did want to, so the motion was a compound motion, right, to accept the rate study and then also to accept the recommendations.
Correct.
If you wanted to split that apart, you would do a substitute motion that would essentially amend it to just one of the two of them, and then you would, if you got a second, vote on that, and then you could bring another motion to do the other half of it if the commission wanted to. So for example, you could do a substitute motion that would, amend the motion to just do the acceptance of the study, and then you would vote on that, and then you could bring another motion if somebody on the commission wanted to implement the recommendations.
Okay. Okay.
Can I just jump in a second?
Just let me stay on this vein, if you will, Jeff, please. So to withdraw the whole motion, we would follow procedure of voting on it and deny it?
Well, if it was a Commissioner Clute who offered the motion, was that correct?
I'm sorry?
Sorry, which of the commissioners offered the motion?
Commissioner Clute.
Yeah. So if Commissioner Clute wanted to withdraw the motion, that would be her prerogative. She could do that. But if not, then you would need to, if she wanted to keep her motion with the two pieces, then you would need to do what I described, that substitute motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I guess I shall withdraw my motion.
Okay. And the second also?
Yeah, yes, this,
Withdraw your
well,
second.
once she withdraws it, yes.
Okay. Mr. Swen, I'll give you.
I was just gonna say, I echo Jordan, this is a big rate increase, et cetera, that we need to study, and we wanna make sure it's right, but I was gonna say, as a lawyer, all I would do is just make a motion to continue this to next meeting. And, but you kinda got it, he kinda got it straight on,
Yeah.
that'll work too, way too.
Okay, good.
We want acts to be taken next meeting, so we can look at the proposal, digest it. We've not seen it until tonight.
So do we need a motion to defer this then, Aaron?
I would agree with Mr. Sven. You could do a motion to continue if you wanted, but it's again the commission's prerogative to do whatever motion you want to do.
Be a motion to defer, that's how we would write it.
Okay.
I make a motion, we defer until next Monday.
Second.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Let's do a roll call vote.
Smith.
Aye.
Clute.
Aye.
Craig.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, Aaron, for putting in there, okay? Okay, we're gonna move on to 8.3, Solid Waste Department Holiday Hours. Commissioner Clute?
All
Would you
right.
like to?
Every week we have a solid waste update. The solid waste department will be closed Thursday through Saturday, November 27th through the 29th. Both Thursdays and Fridays garbage and recycling collection routes will be done on Wednesday, November 26th. Please remember to have your containers out tomorrow night. Trucks will not be rerouted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. 8.4, just a reminder, the city offices will be closed Thursday, November 27th, and Friday, November 28th, in observance of Thanksgiving holidays. So with that, I'm pretty sure I got everything on the list tonight. And I want to apologize for fumbling over and whatever. I want to thank Aaron for being available and ready.